Good afternoon. We're going to let everybody filter in. We've got a really good group of educators signed up for today, so we'll let you get settled in. We have a lot of really good info for you today. All right. And while we're waiting, if you'd like to open up chat, feel free to hop into chat and let us know where you're joining us from. Please share whatever you'd like to share with us. All right. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Kimberly. Hello, Matt. So glad you can join us today. I'm recognizing a ton of names. This is really exciting for me. Every time we do another webinar or a workshop, I come in and I recognize more and more names. So I'm so very, very happy that we have so many of our CodeHS educators back with us. And for those of you who I may not have met virtually yet, I look forward to getting to know you. Hello. Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining us today. Hello, Michael. MR, I was going to say, hello, MR. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome, everybody. Again, if you're just joining us, feel free to go ahead and open up chat and let us know where you're joining from today. Anything else you'd like to share is just fine. Welcome, everybody. So while you're doing that, I'm going to just start in slowly here. So my name's Lori. I'm a PD specialist here at CodeHS. And you might have seen me on some other webinars before. I get to do a lot of these. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. And we also have a couple other CodeHS team members who will be helping with questions and all kinds of things behind the scene. So we have got MR with us today, and she is going to be quickly tossing a ton of links into chat. And we've got Leah with us today, and she's going to be helping out with questions and everything else we need. So keeping us on track. So let's see. Hello, everybody. All right, looks like our numbers are settling in. We will be recording this today. Hey, Julia, it's good to see you. So we are very, very fortunate to have with us today one of our amazing teacher trainers, Eric Magnus. You may have seen some of Eric's other webinars, his other workshops, and we've got Eric back to talk about Create Task for us today. So we are super excited to have Eric with us again today. And let's see, before we leave this slide, make sure to grab either that QR code or click on the link for the slides, codehs.com/create-slides. And that will get you a copy of the slide deck for today. And that will have all the links in it that we talk about today. So you'll definitely want to have that. If you're not in a place to grab this right now, you can always take a picture if you like. This will also get sent out to you after the webinar. We'll give you just a few more seconds if you want to grab that. All right, getting a few more teachers coming in all the time. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. So glad you could join us today. All right, Eric, let's go ahead and go to the next slide, I think. Okay, so I'm pretty sure most of us are all CodeHS teachers, but if you're not, just in case, I wanted to make sure to include the sign up link to create a teacher account. It's always free to create an account. So please make sure you do that. Head out to codehs.com/signup to make your educator account. It only takes a couple of minutes. If you are signing up for the first time today, we do go through a process of verification. So that takes a little bit to get to. You can always drop us a note if you are just signing up today. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And if you do have an account already, we would love it if you would sign into CodeHS, and you can feel free to join our workshop section. We did add the slides to the workshop section, and you can also see some of the other things that Eric is going to be talking about today. He's going to be going through some of the practice PT activities that we have, and both of those are added to the section. So if you'd like to enroll in the section, you can browse to codehs.com/go/BA568. Or better yet, click on the link that MR just tossed into chat. Instead of listening to me, get so tongue-tied. So you can go ahead and do that. And I think the appropriate thing for me to do here would be to stop trying to pronounce my words and just turn this over to the fabulous Eric Magnus. Eric?
Well, hi there. Thanks, Lori. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric, and thanks for coming out today for this. It's, I know, a very busy time of year, and if you're like me, it can be a pretty stressful time of year. I'm right in the middle of the performance task with my students right now, and we'll chat about that as we go through. Here's our progress we're going to go through today. I'll give you a little bit about me and my background and my philosophy for teaching, and then we'll go through the AP-CSP curriculum that we have here at CodeHS. And then I want to focus in on some of the supplemental materials that aren't part of the course proper, but can be easily brought in and used to help us prepare students for the performance task. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about the supplement testing 1, 2, 3, and which I started using several years ago. I really liked it. I think it's a great beginning step for the students. And then when I was teaching it a couple years ago, I realized I could just add a little bit of expansion to it, and it would make it even more helpful as we step up and scaffold them into the performance task. At the end, we'll kind of look at some other items kind of here and there about the performance task and the grading and things like that. So let's join along here. I have been teaching for 25 years. I graduated with a classics major, well on my way to teaching CS, and I taught Latin for 20 years. And about, well, 6 years ago now, I decided I had read the Aeneid 23 times, and I had read Caesar's Gallic War 23 times, and I had just done it enough. And I needed to have something new and refreshing in my life. And at that moment in time, our computer science teacher at my school had decided to retire. And she came up to me and said, I'm retiring. So the next day I put my resume on my principal's desk and said, try me out. And she said, no, I won't consider you for the job. And I said, well, I'd really appreciate it if you would. And so thankfully, 3 months later, she gave me a chance, and it has been great. I've loved every second of it since then. I do teach at Villa Maria Academy. This is in southeastern Pennsylvania. It's an all-girls school, so I get an amazing group of young ladies who come in and destined for future engineering and coding careers. And right away, I got involved with reading for the College Board. And so I started off doing the create task for a while, and then that has gone away. And so now I've been doing the performance task for the last 3 years. And it has been an awesome educational experience. And it is truly the 8 most stressful days of my year every year. It's like that time getting up and scoring and wanting to be the best scorer I can be for the students who have taken this test. I really find invigorating. And then I have a picture of, I am an avid canoeer and kayaker from new boats to old boats. This is one I restored. This is one of my COVID projects, this boat right here that I restored while locked in my house a few years ago. So this is the Penny. So let's get going here. I really like the CodeHS curriculum. I think 1 second here. Yes, I skipped a slide. My teaching philosophy. I have a very loose and independent classroom. I am learning driven. I want my students to learn how to learn and how to teach themselves each new topic that comes up. When they come into my classroom, I will start off a class just catching them up. Here's where we are today. Here's our goal for the day. I'm here for you. Go. And this is one reason I love CodeHS. They will come in, they'll be logged on their computers, they'll grab their equipment, and they just start learning. And I want them to take advantage of the self-guided learning that CodeHS allows them to do. If they ever don't understand something, I say, go watch the video again. Please go check the examples that you skipped right past trying to get to the exercise. Go back. Those examples are there for a reason. Go and use all the resources that we have on CodeHS to learn what you need to do. If they get stuck, we do a lot of paired programming with the navigator and the pilot process in my classroom. And so they'll work with their teammate and try to get the code fixed. It's only then, after they've worked it themselves and worked it with a partner and maybe even grabbed another team. How do we do this? Then they will direct their question to me as I'm walking around the room, and they'll ask. And even then, once they've asked the question, I try to give them a space of time. I call it 68 seconds. It's probably more like 30 seconds, but I give them a space of time. So then by the time I walk over there, I feel like I've waved my magic wand of teaching, because 9 times out of 10, by the time I walk over 30 seconds later, they say, oh, I figured it out. I found my bracket. I figured out what's going on. And it's really wonderful to watch these students teach themselves and teach each other. And I'm always there as the backstop if they need me. I really enjoy the CodeHS curriculum. When I first started, having had no experience teaching coding, the retiring teacher said, you need to go check out CodeHS, because this will be the support you need through the process. I may know coding, but it's just a different animal than what I've been teaching for the last 20 some years. And I jumped right on. I was a free user for the first year. I used it for intro to coding, CSP and CSA, and it was a lifesaver for me. One piece that really is good is that it was, excuse me, just one second.
We'll give Eric just a moment.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
A little
no problem.
non-emergency call from mom there. So I really enjoy CodeHS because of its alignment with the exam, both for CSP and CSA, that it just follows step by step. If you happen to get that hardbound, spiral-bound book that we can get from attending the summer school, it just follows right through it. It made my life really, really easy, just knowing that if I follow the CodeHS curriculum, I will have my students prepared for the exam. I also love how organized and logical it is. This is for my students. They know everything is going to go step by step as we go through, that every piece they need is built on the previous piece and they can follow right through. And if ever I have a student who is missing something, I can say, we've probably skipped a step in the logical progression here. Let's go back and find where did we miss this step and keep going. Another piece I love is this flow and balance of, especially the CSP class, where we start with coding, we build a little bit with coding, and just about the moment my kids have hit their coding limit, we get to take a break and we get to go learn about the internet or data or how computers work. And then we get to come back to coding again. And I really like this balance back and forth through the balance of the material there. My single favorite thing of CodeHS is the Docs tab. I trumpet it to my students from day one, over and over and over again. And when they have questions right now during the performance task, which I cannot answer, I say to them, go to the Docs tab. Have you looked at the Docs tab? If they say to me, my for loop was not working, I say, I cannot help you, but I know somewhere where you can go and it will tell you the answer you need to know. Go straight to the Docs tab. And I really love that element. It's just so easy to find there. And then I happen to be a pro user now, and I have been for 4 years. I love the grading system, how you can fast grade, go right into people's code, look at their code, give them feedback, see what's going on. I just find that very organic, and it's really, really helpful that way. Now, continuing through just CodeHS in general, the videos are all very good, and they've actually been improving dramatically over the years. I think that the pacing, the timing of them is excellent. The accompanying slides are very good. I teach at an all-girls school. It is vital for me to have female voices talking to my students, to know it's okay to be in this field. You're going to have allies there and people like you. And so those videos where they get to hear women talking to them, I find fabulous. The instructions, so often my students want to jump over the instructions. So I'll just say, let's reread those instructions. They are telling you exactly what you need for this. If your code's not working, let's read that instruction again. Let's get that auto grader, because that auto grader is going to not let you through the gate until you have followed all the instructions. And I think they're very clear and concise. My second favorite thing in CodeHS after Docs tab is that solutions button. Now, for me, the way I run my class, I'll have maybe 20 students in a room and we'll be at 10 different areas of code at the same time. We'll have some students lagging behind. They might have missed for a sporting event or illness, some kids pushing ahead. And I also have all ability levels in my room from students who are going to be super engaged and inquisitive and pushing ahead, and some who really need a lot of help. And having those solutions is good for me because I can just glance at it and go, oh, that's right. This is the element that we're emphasizing in this assignment. I can just go over there and just grab them and go. And then additionally to the course has all the elements you need in it, but at the very bottom, it has other supplemental materials that we can add to the course. And there's a lot of them. And that's what I want to talk about today is some of the supplemental materials that we can use when we're preparing the students for the performance task. And here's a way to get to it. In the assignments tab here, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there is a search for contents. And it pops up this window, which has a lot of extra material that we can bring in, whether it's for enrichment or expansion or for preparation for the test. It has AP test prep materials there. It has coding extras here, like the helicopter game and things like that. It also has access to the playlist and problem bank, which has lots of other things that you can bring in to your classes. A lot of these Carol things can be brought in from there, and I'll show you a little more of that later. And then we have these enrichment opportunities for students who might be sprinting ahead from us, and tests like the midterm. And then for me, these two practice PTs, shopping list and testing 1, 2, 3, for me are mandatory for my class. They are something I add to the class at the very beginning, and all of my students will go over them. Today, I'd like to go through testing 1, 2, 3 and just show you how I implement it to prepare my students and scaffold them up for the performance task.
Hey, Eric, before we keep going, I'll stop you for
Yes.
just a second. We've had a couple of questions.
Yes.
Matt was wondering how you have your students take notes, or if you have your students take notes, do they use notebooks, or how do you do that?
So for note taking, there is a sidebar for note taking in CodeHS, and that is where my students will take their notes for when they're trying to extract the essentials that they need. So we all do it. I'm in a lab. We all have computers. We are a one-to-one school, so we also have iPads, but I don't have the iPads out since we already have the computers out. Those are just a distraction. And so they will split their screen and have the lesson, and then they'll use the CodeHS note-taking tab on the side.
Perfect, thank you. And then let's see, somebody else was asking which version you're using. And I believe you're using the JavaScript version of the APC.
That's right. Yes, I should say I am using the JavaScript version. The cybersecurity version, I love the looks of that one, but right now I'm using the JavaScript version. Yes.
Perfect. And as a side note about the JavaScript and Python, well, actually all of them, they all have the same, the content is mirrored. Of course, you know, the languages are a little different. Python would include a few more data structures, but the content is definitely mirrored. So you'd get the same modules in both of the units, or in both of the courses. And yeah, there is the cybersecurity version, which I absolutely would have used if I was still in the classroom. So definitely something checking out.
The cybersecurity is very engaging for the students, especially with that kind of career-oriented type of stuff. The Python, I do teach Python because I have so many students who want to have the Python course. And as Lori was saying, a lot of those modules are very similar. It's just what we're doing is when I do it, I'm layering a new language onto it. They move very, very swiftly. They're aware of some of the logics that they've already learned in JavaScript. Now we just put it in Python instead. That's right.
Perfect.
So thank you for those questions.
One other thing I want to mention really fast. Somebody asked about what if this is available for free or pro teachers. Pretty much everything that we are looking at today is going to be available for free teachers as well. So we're not going to get into features that really are available just for pro. So
we've got one more question that you may go over at a later point. So if you will, that's fine. But the question is just addressing how much help that students can get knowing that they can look resources up online, but how much are teachers able to help students?
I think that's something we'll probably go over a little later, Eric.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we're talking specifically for the performance task, we will go over some very specific elements for that a little later today. But thank you very much. Yeah, we'll make sure we get to that for you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep. So in testing 1, 2, 3, this supplement, this particular one says the fourth prompt of the create performance task requires you to describe 2 calls to a procedure identified in the written response. Each call must pass a different argument that causes a different segment of code to execute. You then need to describe what your call is, what condition is being tested, and what the output is. So this is the fourth prompt, and for scoring purposes, this is the 6th line of scoring in the rubric. This is one a lot of students struggle with. I think what they primarily struggle with is what is this idea of a call and what it is we're an input into the computer. And I want to show you what I do here is I have my students write this code. It takes them about 40 minutes, maybe an hour to write this initial set of code. And what they're going to look at is they're going to be comparing 2 strings. They're going to be comparing a string entered by a user to a set string and determining whether or not the patient is infected or is not infected. And here's what we have here is we have call 1 with a certain output, and then we have a second call with a different output, with a different line of code running. And that's essential for the purposes of the AP requirements. This also reinforces this idea of index of, where we're looking through a string and trying to find where this is in a string. And you can see down here, this example below, if we have a string hello Carol, and we're trying to find, is Carol in my hello Carol? And we ask it with this index of, it responds 6, telling us that Carol is beginning at the 6th index value. If we were to ask the same question using Tracy, it's going to send back a -1, saying that it is not in this string. So if it is in the string, it'll give a value of 0 to however long the string is. And if it's not, it'll give us a -1. And this is what the students will work with here. And this is the solution code that is provided by CodeHS that we're looking at right here. And this fulfills beautifully this 4th row. We have our function being called with our parameter, and here's our function with the parameter. We have call 1, which we compared here and triggered this condition to say the patient is infected. Then we'll have a second call to say the patient is not infected. And just so you know, this exclamation point equals is saying that this is not in the string, therefore it is, and the patient's there. So this is our first step. Now, what's wonderful about this for me is this fulfills both rows 4 and 6 of our code. It's having selection, a parameter, a function, and a function call. So we have selection in our if statement. We have our parameter in our input DNA. We have our function that's created by the student, and then up here, our function call. So this fulfills 2 rows that a lot of students miss in this model right here. What it is not having that is be required by the AP is iteration and a list. And it's really only just a small step away. And so what I do is I extend this with my students in the second half of the class to say, we've done a great job, but we are really just one little thing away from adding rows 2, 3, and 5, and basically having this whole thing in our belt right here. All we need to do is add an iteration and add a list. So instead of having a read line and a user input right here, we just have a fixed list that we create. We pass that list on down to our function, and then we have our for loop to add our iteration. And then we just have a for loop. This goes through each element. And as it goes through each element, we have an if and an else and an if and an else. And it tells us whether or not we're infected or not, whether each of these test cases would be infected. And I think that our apple is not infected. So there we go. And this would take, I'm on a block schedule, on an AB block. And so this routine that we just went through would take me about an 80-minute full block with the students. we would start off with the testing 1, 2, 3. They would write the code on their own, not my help, practicing for the performance task. And then we will add these elements and just say, look, this is how easy it is. We have written 20 lines of code and we have all but fulfilled every element needed by the performance task. Now, for my students, I do add a second extension. And this second extension is focusing on the loop and a half, this while true right here. I find that my students struggle with the loop and a half. And so I try to reinforce it here. So instead of a fixed list, we start with an empty list, and then we have a user add DNA information over and over and over again until we break, and then we push that all down. We push it into our list and then down into our function that we created before. And this really allows me to reinforce the while loop and show them we're not just stuck with a for loop for AP, we can also do the loop and a half. And the while loop as well. The other thing I want them to see is adding a user interface. So when it comes to the AP, one of the questions it asks us is, what is the purpose of your program? And what is the function of the program? And I have students who struggle with that. And as a reader, that is a commonly confused element, purpose versus function. And I have found, if I have my students add even the briefest user interface, welcoming through the program, welcoming the ideas, telling them what's going on, then they have taken the code from a standalone item and put it in a real world experience to say, this is how it's being used. And once it's used in the real world, then they go, oh, this is why I created my program. And that why gives us our purpose. And the what it does, which is what they've written, that gives us our function. So we get our purpose versus our function. So these are the two extensions I do when it comes to this loop and a half and adding the for loop and the list. So this gets us kind of to the end of that supplement itself. And I want to go over a few things with you here that I've kind of just noticed. How do I continue this with my students from this point? Some things I've noticed when I was scoring, and some things that you can find on CodeHS to help you and for your students to find help during their performance task. As soon as we have finished the testing 1, 2, 3, the first thing I have them do is complete a full write-up. I have them look at the AP. It's actually in CodeHS. All the instructions are there. And they should go through and find all the elements they need as they go through. The next element I have them do is a pre-assigned portion of CodeHS that's a reflection. What did you think of this task? What was hard about this task? What would you improve about yourself in this task? Just have them think, where are we going for this? And then, of course, the scoring rubric, the scoring rubric, the scoring rubric. This will be the umpteenth time my students will have seen the scoring rubric, and now it's getting reality. They need to look at this and analyze it, vet their own answers, and they need to grade themselves and be honest. Did I answer this question? Am I doing this correctly? For this process, I have an AP template fill-in. I'm going to be clear. This is not a fill in the blank. This isn't Mad Libs. These aren't sentence starters. It's just made to look like the AP website. It has the question and the bubble and the question and the bubble. So they get used to this little step-by-step filling in of items, answering each question and being very clear that they're answering each question. I'm going to pause here just for a second and show you. This is our sample class that maybe some of you got to join. As I scroll down here, here are the standard lessons here that I've gone through throughout the year, going through data structures, digital information, our practice coding lessons here. And then once we get down here, just before I get to the performance task, right here is where I have them add these two supplements, the practice PT testing 1, 2, 3, which we just went over. And then after that, they do the practice PT shopping list. The shopping list, I have them do over the course of 2 days, 2.5 days. So that'd be about 200 minutes of class time. Do I mean that? Yeah. And they do this completely independently, 100% independently. Then they grade themselves, they turn it in, and I grade it like I'm grading a performance task for real. And so this gives them one, a little bit of a supported, scaffolded exercise and practice. And then there's a fully independent exercise that makes it so they can really mess up and have a chance to really screw it up. And I can go and say, I don't even know what you're thinking you're doing here. The AP won't even accept this. There's no reason to turn this in. They'll just give you a 0 on it. Why would you turn in a 0? So, and then if there's any other supplements, I will tell you, I always scroll down to the bottom of the screen and did search for content. Today, after teaching with CodeHS for 5 years, I learned there's an add button right here. Who knew? I just come up here to my add button, click on my CodeHS course, and then I can just find all the supplemental material right here. I just come in here to my, well, here we go. Where's my course here? Oh, here we go, right here. My principles class. And then here are all the extras I can just find right here. And here's my supplemental modules, all right here. Who knew? It's fabulous. It's easier to find than I ever thought. And these are some other great extensions and enrichments you can do. The data structure problems, the tic-tac-toe problem, the helicopter game. These are all great things. If you've got that kid who's just pushing ahead, add these on, challenge them. They're going to love it. So these are all great things to do. So the other thing I have them do is go to the College Board, find the exam models. A, B, and C models are perfect scores. They're 6s out of 6. I say, look at them, read them, know them. These are the ones that we want ours to look like. Then D through J get progressively worse and worse and worse. I try to avoid having them see them at all. There's no reason to look at stuff that doesn't score well. Let's just look at stuff that does score well. So we look at those. Over here, there is an APCSP resource hub in CodeHS that has excellent stuff. 2 of the elements they have are Sample A and Sample B. Both of them are great code. Both of them are great videos. Sample A also has an excellent write-up that gives a 6 out of 6. Sample B could score a 6 out of 6, but for the poor write-up. And I think that's very important for the students to understand. Even if your code's great, you've got to focus on a quality write-up to make sure everything's being answered correctly and to focus on what is being asked. So some of the pitfalls I have noticed scoring over the years are some ones I want to highlight here. I mentioned before in row 1, one of the questions asks about the purpose, one asks about the function. There needs to be a real strong distinction, the why of the program versus the what of the program. I've also had in all of my practice this year a real frustration because in the next 2, 3A3 and 3A4, I believe, it asks a student to describe what is demonstrated in the video. Describe what is demonstrated in the video. And I have found my students have been describing what their code does. And they have not been describing what is demonstrated in the video. And that there's that can be very different. And so I've been really trying to hammer that home in the weeks leading up to our performance task. In row 3, another pitfall I see sometimes is to answer the question why the program could not be written differently or would be different, composed in a different way. Many students on the AP says, couldn't be written differently. This is the only way, that's it. And I just want to say that is remarkably unlikely that someone has written a code that is the unique way of writing this code in all the world, and it could not be written differently. It just is the highest unlikely of possible answers. What I would encourage the students to do instead say is, this program could be written differently by, instead of using a list, using individual variables for each item in the list, and then proceed from there. Because that is a reasonable explanation of how it could be written differently. Now, there is a chance that it could not be written in any different way. But I just want to say it is very unlikely I've never had that in any of my students that have written something that could not be written a different way. In row 4, the question asks, talk about your algorithm, your procedure, and how does it relate to the overall function of the program? Many students will talk about the algorithm, the procedure, and forget to say how it ties into the program as a whole. It receives information in, it sends information back. So just get it to be relational. That's a very important piece that a lot of kids skip over as they're doing their write-up. And then finally, row 5 is the easiest row to grade, and I think the hardest one for the students to write. When they are writing their procedure, it needs sequencing, selection, and iteration. And the key to this is have a loop in your procedure and have if-else statements in your procedure. If you have your loop, a while loop or a for loop, you have your iteration. If you have if-elses, you have your selection. And if you have all that together, that gives you sequencing. The other element you must have for row 5 is you got to have a parameter. And so just with a glance, a grader and you could just look at their procedure and go, nope, yes, no, it's just quickest grade. For students, it can be a little bit harder. I do mention a for loop here, and the reason I mention a for loop is because while loops give us infinite loops, and there's nothing more frustrating, I would say personally, for me as a teacher, when I cannot help a student and they have an infinite loop, and I am stuck for 12 teaching hours of not being able to help them out of there. So I just say, if you use a for loop, it just feels more controllable to the student as opposed to a while loop. I just had that experience. I had a student too, actually, who were having while loop issues. They wrote their code very quickly, which was good. And then they had while loop issues, and they spent, I had 2 full class blocks each fighting through a while loop. One fixed it, and the other one realized that she just needed to delete it, and it was superfluous. So, but they finally got there. It just took an extra 160 minutes of, we had a few tears, but they made it through. So, something that just came on about a year and a month ago is the CodeHS Resource Hub, which I mentioned, which has lots of great extra information. It's got stuff for each of the CSP courses. It's got these links to the questions of the day, which, by the way, my students love the question of the day. And they have this link here to the AP CSP review course, which I will show you more in just a second. Let's see here. So what's next for my class? After the testing 1, 2, 3, we immediately do shopping list, and we start doing multiple choice question exam prep immediately. I take this from the AP website. I sign up for homework. I don't grade them on correctness because I can't guarantee they're doing them on their own, but I just want them to see as many questions as possible over and over and over again. Then we jump in the performance task. My crew has 2 more hours to go, and then we'll be finished with our performance task. So I think they're all going to make it, I hope. And then we go back, we do material review. This is all through CodeHS to review the course. What have we seen? Remind ourselves of terminologies, remind ourselves of things we learned way back in September. This question of the day, I hold back on that in September, October, November, December, and we only start it in early January, where we then go back and then we feel awesome about ourselves because we're answering all these questions correctly. I tell them, I don't care if you get the answer right or not. I just want to know, do you understand why? If you get it wrong, why'd you get it wrong? If you got it right, why'd you get it right? If you just guess, that does me no good. And then we get our countdown to the big day, which for us, we get 2 big days. I think our 2 big days are May 1st, when we got to get our performance tasks in for the students, and May 8th at noon when the multiple choice comes. So that's when we make a big run up for that. Just lots of MCQ practice and warming up for the big show. Lori, I think I'll toss it back to you at this point.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. So we do have a couple of questions that I'm just going to bounce through before we go through some of these last things. So Juliet asks, they don't get the point if their parameter is a global variable, right? So if the function still works if you remove the parameter.
That is true. Well, I think that is true. If the function still runs, the reason it will be difficult is because it's the passing of the parameter that's really important. Well, just to have the parameter and to also get the point for row 6, because we need to be able to input 2 different calls, and that's that parameter, in order to have 2 different sections of code run. I do think in the video that AP put out this year on one of the videos they just put out, I can't remember if it's the prep one or the plagiarism one, they also do mention they're going to be very focused on the parameter being a meaningful parameter. I always felt like there was emphasis on that. They specifically mentioned it in one of those videos this year.
Good to know. Tom is asking, and I may have missed this because I was answering some other questions too. So Tom asks, so then the CodeHS shopping list practice PT does not meet the requirement as it only calls the procedure once. Would that be correct?
No, the shopping list does fulfill it, and it's because I really hope I'm telling you the right thing here, but I believe it does, and it's because this program, they are allowed to run the program more than once. So if they were to run the program once with shopping list and enter the items that they don't need to shop for, that would be parameter 1, which would output you don't need to go shopping. And then they would run the program a second time with things they would need to go shopping for, and then the output would be you do need to go shopping. So that would be 2 different calls and 2 different outputs. In fact, I know this is true because sample A from CodeHS is doing a math program. At the very beginning, the student can choose, do I want to do multiplication or division? And if they want to do multiplication, M, then the multiplication portion of the program runs. Then if they rerun the program and they choose D for division, then the division portion of the program runs. And that gives us our 2 calls with our 2 outputs. And I believe sample B of the AP College Board is a very similar code to that as well.
Perfect.
I think it's sample B. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then we've got a couple more questions. What is the max number of students that you suggest should work on the PT together?
That's excellent. The max I would say is 2, because they need to have enough code that they can say that the procedure they're turning in, they did, that they can be responsible for the code. I will tell you, for my classroom, they all work alone. They are not allowed to work with a partner. So now through the year, I know I said paired program. We do lots of paired programming through the semester and the year, but when we get the performance task and the testing 1, 2, 3 and shopping list, we are working solo at that point. Yes. But I would say if you do more than 2, you're going to be at risk of, my fear is you're at risk of a little too much camaraderie. Even if they get through the code successfully, the write-up is, you are not of any assistance on the write-up. 0. No one can check your work. You can't have a classmate. Nobody can check your work. And I just feel like the temptation at my school would be for 2 teammates to then gently help each other on the write-up, which just is a perilous moment. So, yeah.
And I think we have a question that closely follows up with that. So we'll just reiterate with this one. If students collaborate on the PT, do they each have to build a function with all the requirements?
You know what? I think I better be safe and not fully answer that question. It is my view that I think that they would, but because it does say in the assignment that it's a student created procedure, and I do think that's referring to the individual student, but I'm sorry, I cannot solidly answer that question.
That is
safety wise, I'd say yes.
That's how I would see that as well. It's the individual student. So
yeah.
And then let's see.
Lori,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Lori.
When do you have students begin their performance PT? You mentioned you have 2 hours left, and they're wondering because their students just started their PT.
Yeah, I think it's fine that you just started your PT. The reason my PT is so far along is because I'm an AB block, which I see them for long periods of time, but only periodically. I may only see them twice a week. And starting next week, we have this enormous spring break. We're going to be on spring break for 12 days. So it sounds like I'm really far ahead, but I just needed to get it in before we hit spring break, because I come back to spring break and we're just right there. We're stone's throw away from the exam. So yeah, I was kind of forced to maybe push a little bit earlier, but between AB block and a oddly placed, possibly long spring break, which I'm looking forward to, I've already started. But if you started now and you're just normally meeting them on a daily basis for 50 minutes a day, by the time I'm back from spring break, we'll be at the same spot.
Perfect. And I would totally agree with when I was teaching yet, I got myself into a position the first year I taught APCSP where I waited just a bit long and suddenly we had snow days. And yeah, there can be a lot of things that play into that. If you can get this started sooner rather than later, it's going to make you feel more comfortable that you have that time to give your kids. So for sure.
That's true. It's true.
So
Lori, I'm gonna jump to the next slide real quick.
Sure.
Because I think it'll go with the questions that people were asking. And
yes,
just not to step on your toes here, but I'll let you go. I think this goes with our people worries. So
you are on the exact same wavelength as me. So this is the slide I wanted to hit because I think this will answer some questions. So we've dropped a few tips here, and these come from the College Board. From I think the handouts, if I recall correctly. Oh, yep, it says it right there. So, but this is going to give you some assistance and some guidance as you think about things that your students cannot do once they start this PT task. So things your students cannot do. They cannot seek assistance in writing, revising, amending, or correcting work, including debugging the program, writing, designing functionality, all of that. And they cannot get this assistance from anyone other than a collaborative partner. So any questions that they might have as far as writing, editing, any of it, you cannot help them as the teacher. Let's see, students cannot submit practice performance tasks or any work that has been revised, amended, or corrected by another individual other than the collaborative partner. This one for me, when I was teaching, and Eric, you might have some thoughts on this as well, and I think this will go to one of the questions we have in the Q&A. I had my students practice a lot. They did a lot of practice, and any activity they did for a practice, even if they were just coming up with an idea on their own, that idea then was off limits for the create task. I just simply would not allow it. This is something I've given you feedback on. They may, and actually in my case, I didn't grade those because those were practice and I didn't want it to be high stakes in that way. But they simply could not use it. If they used it in class, they got feedback on it in class, they didn't get to use it. Eric, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add there.
Completely, that is off limits. It's 100%. Yeah, that's off limits. Now, I do think AP makes it pretty clear. If there's code that they have seen that they like, so for example, I refer to the caterpillar code or the worm code or the click and make rectangles on the screen code that they've done, or the make the French flag code, all the stuff they've done in the fall, which they love, the shape stuff. I say, you can build on that. There's no list there. There's not a for loop there. If you take that as your inspiration and you're going to increase its functionality by adding loops and if else's and parameters and lists, that's a perfectly fine piece to do. So they have some type of inspirational foundation. But yeah, I think that's okay to do.
Yeah. Let's see, other things here. Students cannot seek answers or provide feedback on answers to prompts. Students cannot collaborate during the creation of the video or the written responses. And students cannot revise work once completed and submitted it as a final to the AP digital portfolio. So these things are going to be really important to keep in mind. Take a look at that link included on the slide deck to go over any other things here. And these are absolutely things you can give your students as well. So it's going to feel very strange if this is your first time going through the create these tasks. It's odd when you're sitting there and you can't help your students, but this is absolutely that's an imperative. You have to keep yourself back from that. So you have brought them to this point. They are ready to take that test, and now it is their turn. So let's go ahead, Eric. Let's go to the next slide. So this is also a statement that's pretty recent that you're going to find on the College Board's site, and it's guidance around artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, all of those tools. So take a look at this, share this with your kids. Students are absolutely prohibited from using any and all AI tools. So ChatGPT, any of the new ones that are coming out. I know Google's AI tool is out now. I just got access to that to play around as a beta tester. So there are a ton of tools out there. They cannot use any of them as they are doing the PT task. So make sure that they are aware of that. And we've included the direct link to this. This is an actual screenshot. So I wanted to make sure to include that here. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, we've got some more resources here, and I'm going to make sure that I've got the most updated scoring guidelines there. We'll double check that and make sure that is good to go. But these are some more resources from College Board that you can, or from AP Central that you can take a look at. Student handouts, your student user guides, all of that. Let's go to the next slide. And we've got more resources here, and these are specifically CodeHS resources. We do have a slide a few back that shows you a few other AP resources as well that we have. Actually, Eric, can we go back a few?
Yep, indeed.
Right there. Perfect. Thank you. So on this slide, we do have the AP CSP Hub. Again, you're going to find a ton of stuff there. Definitely take a look at that. You can get access to some of the tutorials that will have those different scoring examples. Definitely share those with your kids, practice those scoring examples, make sure they know how things are scored. We've got a link to the CED here. We also have a really good knowledge base article that also includes all of our resources in another spot. If we're going to give it to you in one spot, we might as well give it to you in about 4 more spots too. So you'll have it there as well. And then the AP CSP Readers Question Bank, we have the direct link there. Okay, now let's zip back ahead to wherever we were.
And may I advertise that reader question bank is invaluable. I really, really like that. It's an excellent resource for prepping the students. Yep.
I would definitely take a look at that for sure. So we've got our CodeHS resources. So definitely, if you are not a certified educator, and I am seeing so many names, I just feel like I know you. Someday when I get to meet you in person, you're getting a big old hug from me. So, so I see your names constantly. If you're not a certified educator yet, please head out and take a look at that. We'd love to have you join our certified educator family. Take a look at the CodeHS Educator Facebook group. We have got tons more workshops coming up. So we've got more AP workshops. We've got another preparing for the AP CSP exam and preparing for the AP CSA exam in a couple of weeks. And we will be posting very soon, probably in the next few weeks, a really robust summer schedule of virtual workshops. I am fairly confident in saying that Eric will be back for that. So, as well as many of our other amazing teacher trainers. So definitely take a look at codehs.com/freepd. Keep an eye on that. Summer schedule's coming soon. Let's go ahead and go to that next slide. So these are the workshops that are coming up. I guess I left the create task on there too. I'll make sure to include the link to the recording. But we just had the CSA FRQ webinar on Tuesday, so you can access that recording here. And you can also sign up for preparing your students for the APCSA exam on Wednesday, April 5th, preparing students for the APCSP exam on Wednesday, April 12th. And you can sign up for those at codehs.com/free PD. And we have another cool thing coming up. There it is. If you have not registered for the CodeHS Virtual Teacher Conference, please head out and register today. We want you all to be involved. We've got a ton of amazing sessions planned for our virtual teacher conference on Saturday, April 15th from 10:30 to 2, just a small chunk out of your Saturday. We would love to see all of you there. And I do believe our infamous Eric will be presenting at the teacher conference as well. So
That's
definitely head out to codehs.com/2023 conference to check that out and register. Cool. And let's go to the next slide. Oh, and that's it. That's it. That wraps us up for today. So I want to thank all of you for joining us for an amazing workshop. Eric, I always look forward to your webinars and your sessions. I learn a lot and I absolutely love them. I know everybody learns so much from you. So thank you so much for doing this for us today, Eric. We so appreciate you.
Yeah.
And thank you to the CodeHS team for supporting all of us on the questions and links and all of that. So keep us posted. If you have any questions, reach out to any of us. Reach out to support if you have questions, especially as you're preparing your kids for this all-important time of year, the AP exams. So thank you again. Thank you all for joining us, and have an amazing rest of your evening and rest of your week. Thank you so much, everybody.